Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of NASCAR Veterans, Geoff Bodine. Born April 18th, 1949, Jeffrey Eli Bodine was born into a racing family. His father and grandfather, Eli Bodine Jr. and Sr., built the Chemung Speedrome when Jeff was only 1 year old. He began his racing career at the age of 5 at the Chemung Speedrome in the micro-midget division. By the 1970s, he moved up to the Modified Series, where he found a ton of success, winning 11 Yankee All-Star League races and 2 championships in 1976 and 78. In 78, Bodine won all the races he started in the Yankee All-Star League. Also in 78, Jeff won 55 modified feature events throughout the season. Truthfully, he was really one of the very best modified drivers of his generation, really of all time. After all kinds of success in modifieds, Bodine began his transition to NASCAR in 1979 by making 3 NASCAR Cup Series starts in Jack Beebe's number 47 Race Hill Farms Oldsmobile. His best start was 16th at Daytona in the spring, and his best finish was 22nd at Rockingham in the spring. In 1980, he won the Spring Sizzler at Stafford Speedway, the Oxford 250 at Oxford Plains Speedway, as well as the Dogwood 500 Classic and Modifieds at Martinsville Speedway. That following season, in 1981, Jeff made his return to the NASCAR Cup Series, though he also ran some late model and modified races, winning the Dogwood 500 Classic and late models in Martinsville, and the Cardinal Classic 500 also at Martinsville. But he was in a modified for that event. Also winning the Oxford 250 for the second year in a row. Speaking of the Oxford 250, for the first 2 Cup Series starts of the 1981 season, Oxford Plains Speedway advertised the Oxford 250 on Jeff's race car. He was behind the wheel of the number 23 Pontiac for Dick Bear. His best start was 14th, and his best finish was 22nd, both coming at Daytona in the spring. Near the end of the 81 Cup Series season, he made 3 more starts, behind the wheel of the number 01 Buick for Emmanuel Zervakis. His best start was 10th at Atlanta in the fall, and his best finish was 7th in Charlotte in the fall. This was his first career top 10 Cup Series finish. Finally, in 1982, Bodine was able to put together enough starts to fight Mark Martin for Rookie of the Year honors in the Cup Series. He began the season behind the wheel of Dick Bear's number 23 Buick, starting 34th and finishing 42nd, following an accident on lap 3 at Daytona in the spring. He set out the next 5 races until he picked up a ride from Cliff Stewart's number 50 Performance Connection Pontiac race team. His best start was first twice at Daytona and Talladega in the summer. His best finish was 3rd at Riverside in the summer. Bodine did, in fact, beat Martin for Rookie of the Year honors in 82. Overall, he scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 4 top 5s, and 10 top 10s, finishing 24th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. He also made his Xfinity Series debut, making 10 starts for Frank Plessinger's number 01, number 1, and number 99 Pontiacs. His best start was first twice at Richmond and Martinsville in the spring. His best finish was first at Darlington in the spring. They ran the first 6 races, even taking the point lead, though due to a lack of sponsorship, they cut back to only making 4 more starts throughout the season. Overall, he scored 2 poles, 1 win, 4 top 5s, and 6 top 10s, finishing 19th in final Xfinity Series point standings. It was a change of scenery for the 1983 season, though he still drove for Cliff Stewart, this season behind the wheel of the number 88 Gatorade Pontiac. Though he had a very tough season, in 28 starts, the race ended in DNFs 15 times, leaving Stewart to close it down the team with 2 races to go in the season. His best start was first at Atlanta in the fall, and his best finish was 2nd at Dover in the fall. Overall, he scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 5 top 5s, and 9 top 10s, finishing 17th in final Cup Series point standings. As far as the Xfinity Series, he made 4 starts for Plessinger Racing's number 89 and number 50 Pontiacs. His best start was 5th at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 2nd at Daytona in the spring. After bouncing from ride to ride for a few years, in 1984, Bodine hooked up with Rick Hendrick to form All-Star Racing, the predecessor to Hendrick Motorsports, behind the wheel of the number 5 Northwestern Security Life Chevrolet. Harry Hyde served as his crew chief starting in 1984. His best start was first 3 times at Bristol in the summer, then Martinsville and Rockingham in the fall. His best finish was first 3 times at Martinsville in the spring, Nashville in the summer, and Riverside in the fall. Hendrick was about to shut down the race team prior to the spring Martinsville race, until crew chief Harry Hyde told Hendrick that Bodine runs great at Martinsville, and the car's already prepared, so let's just go and see how we do. Well, they went, and Bodine scored his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory, and the team's. Overall, throughout the rest of the season, he scored 3 poles, 3 wins, 7 top 5s, and 14 top 10s, finishing 9th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Geoff also made 12 Xfinity Series starts for Hendrick's number 15 Hendrick Honda Pontiac. His best start was first 3 times, at South Boston in the summer, then Rockingham and Martinsville in the fall. His best finish was first at Rockingham in the fall. Overall, in 12 Xfinity Series starts, he scored 3 poles, 1 win, 8 top 5s, and 9 top 10s, finishing 23rd in final Xfinity Series point standings. Bodine returned to the number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports for the 1985 NASCAR Cup Series season. His best start was first 3 times at Richmond, Martinsville, and North Wilkesboro in the fall. His best finish was second 3 times at Richmond and Atlanta in the spring, then North Wilkesboro in the fall. This wasn't a bad season at all for Bodine, spending every single season inside the top 10 in point standings. Overall, he scored 3 poles, 0 wins, 10 top 5s, and 19 top 10s, finishing 5th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Geoff made 5 Xfinity Series starts in the number 5 and number 15 Levi Garrett Pontiacs. His best start was first twice, at Rockingham in the spring and Charlotte in the fall. His best finish was first at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 5 starts, he scored 2 poles, 1 win, 3 top 5s, and 3 top 10s. For the 1986 NASCAR Cup Series season, Bodine remained the driver of the number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Gary Nelson became his crew chief starting in 1986. The season started the right way for Bodine and the team, winning the 1986 Daytona 500. His best start was first 9 times at both Bristol races, Richmond, Darlington, North Wilkesboro, Charlotte, and Pocono in the spring, then Dover and Martinsville in the fall. His best finish was first twice at Daytona and Dover in the spring. This was an up-and-down season for Bodine, winning a couple races and running well, though racking up 12 DNFs throughout the season. Overall, he scored 9 poles, 2 wins, 10 top 5s, and 15 top 10s, finishing 8th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Geoff only made 3 Xfinity Series starts, again in Hendrick Motorsports number 5 and 15 Pontiacs. His best start was first at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was second at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 3 Xfinity Series starts, he scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 2 top 5s, and 2 top 10s. The 1987 Cup Series season was not nearly as good for Bodine. He returned to the number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. His best start was first twice at Martinsville and Riverside in the fall, and his best finish was second at Richmond in the spring. The team didn't win and spent all season in the teens in point standings, as well as his major rivalry with Dale Earnhardt that would end up being the story for the movie Days of Thunder, when Dale Earnhardt knocked Bodine and Bill Elliott out of the way to win the $200,000 prize money in the All-Star race. Geoff retaliated just 6 days later when he hit Dale during an Xfinity Series race at Charlotte. NASCAR fined Bodine $15,000, though he appealed and the penalty was revoked. Overall, Bodine scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 3 top 5s, and 10 top 10s, finishing 13th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Then, in the Xfinity Series, Geoff made another 8 starts in the number 15 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. His best start was first at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was first at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 8 starts, he scored 1 pole, 1 win, 4 top 5s, and 4 top 10s, finishing 37th in final Xfinity Series point standings. In 1988, Geoff Bodine once again returned to the number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. Waddell Wilson served as his crew chief for the 1988 season. Bodine's best start was first 3 times at Atlanta in the spring, Watkins Glen in the summer, and Phoenix in the fall. His best finish was first at Pocono in the spring. Geoff's season got off to a bit of a slow start, but by race 9 at Talladega, he worked his way into the top 10 in points and remained there for the remainder of the season. Overall, he scored 3 poles, 1 win, 10 top 5s, and 16 top 10s, finishing 6th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. The same Xfinity Series race at Charlotte in the spring as it happened last season with Bodine and Earnhardt, this time with Earnhardt spinning Bodine. The next day, during the Cup Series Coca-Cola 600, Earnhardt wrecked Bodine's car, and NASCAR assessed him a 5-lap penalty. 2 days later, both drivers and car owners got together with the sanctioning body of NASCAR in Daytona Beach. This is where both parties settled their disputes. Now, back down in the Xfinity Series, Geoff made 9 starts in the number 15 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. His best start was first 3 times at both Darlington races in Charlotte in the fall. His best finish was first at Darlington in the spring. Overall, in 9 starts, he scored 3 poles, 1 win, 4 top 5s, and 10 top 10s, finishing 31st in final Xfinity Series point standings. Once again, Geoff Bodine reprised his role as the driver of the Hendrick Motorsports number 5 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Richard Broom served as his crew chief for the 1989 season. The beginning of the season was very strong for Bodine, though starting at race 11 at Dover, the performance dropped off significantly. Though he won late in the season at North Wilkesboro, his best start was first 3 times at Richmond and Martinsville in the spring. His best finish was first at North Wilkesboro in the fall. Overall, he scored 3 poles, 1 win, 9 top 5s, and 11 top 10s, finishing 9th final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Geoff made 4 Xfinity Series starts, 3 in Hendrick Motorsports number 15 Levi Garrett Chevrolet. His best start was first, and his best finish was first, both coming at Darlington in the spring. He also made 1 start for Bill Davis in his number 1 Carolina Ford dealers Ford at Martinsville in the fall. He started 3rd and finished 4th. At the conclusion of the 1989 NASCAR Cup Series season, Bodine and Hendrick Motorsports parted ways. A new decade. It was 1990, and to start the new decade, Geoff Bodine was with a brand new team, the number 11 Budweiser Ford, owned by Junior Johnson and Associates. The same exact race team that several years later, Geoff's middle brother Brett would drive, then buy and run as an owner-driver in the Cup Series. Geoff is the oldest of 3 racing Bodine brothers. His younger brother Todd would end up being the 2006 and 2010 Craftsman Truck Series champion. Tim Brewer served as his crew chief starting in 1990. Bodine would have the best year of his NASCAR Cup Series career in 1990. His best start was first twice at Darlington and Martinsville in the spring. His best finish was first 3 times at both Martinsville races, then Pocono in the summer. Geoff spent all but 3 weeks of the season inside the top 5 in NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Overall, he scored 2 poles, 3 wins, 11 top 5s, and 19 top 10s, finishing 3rd in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Geoff made 2 Xfinity Series starts in Henry Shaw's number 01 and number 14 Budweiser Ford and Pontiac. His best start was 27th at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was 24th in Oxford in the summer. These 2 starts would be his final Xfinity Series starts for 9 seasons. Bodine would return to Junior Johnson and Associates number 11 Budweiser Ford for 1 more season in 1991. His best start was first twice at Darlington in the spring and Phoenix in the fall. His best finish was first at Charlotte in the fall. This season was not as successful as the season prior for Bodine, with him even missing 2 races during the Cup Series season due to a practice crash for the Coca-Cola 600, though he still found victory lane. Overall, he scored 2 poles, 1 win, 6 top 5s, and 12 top 10s, finishing 14th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. From one legendary owner to another in 1992, Geoff became the new driver of Bud Moore's number 15 Motorcraft Ford. Donnie Wingo was his crew chief starting in 1992. He spent a little over the first half of the season inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings. So it really wasn't great, but he did pull out 2 victories near the end of the season. Overall, he scored 0 poles, 2 wins, 7 top 5s, and 11 top 10s, finishing 16th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Bodine was watching the Winter Olympics when the U.S. bobsled team was having a difficult time during the 1992 Winter Olympics competition. He figured out that the sleds the team used were all imported. He felt as though, with all his race car experience and engineering background, not to mention the design and constructive resources that he had through his NASCAR connections, he co-founded Bodine Bobsleds in 1992. The U.S. team first used the sleds in 1994. Then during the 2002 Winter Olympics, the team won 3 medals. And in 2010, Steve Holcomb piloted a Bodine sled to the gold medal. At the beginning of the 1993 NASCAR Cup Series season, Bodine didn't realize that he would end up finishing the season as an owner-driver, though he did. Bodine began the season and made the first 23 starts of the season behind the wheel of the number 15 Motorcraft Ford for Bud Moore. His best start was first at Martinsville in the spring, and his best finish was first at Sonoma in the spring. Again, he started his season pretty strong, spending 20 weeks inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings, before making his final 7 starts of his 1993 season behind the wheel of Alan Kulwicki's former 1992 championship-winning team, purchasing the team after Alan's untimely and shocking death in a plane crash. Bodine's new team was the number 7 Family Channel Ford, with Paul Andrews as his new crew chief starting when Bodine bought the number 7 team. His best start was second at Martinsville in the fall, and his best finish was 10th at Rockingham in the fall. Overall, he scored 1 pole, 1 win, 2 top 5s, and 9 top 10s, finishing 16th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. 1994 marked the first season that Bodine would run a full season as an owner-driver, behind the wheel of the number 7 Exide Batteries Ford. NASCAR was also in the midst of the tire wars between Hoosier and Goodyear. Bodine was a Hoosier user, and at the time, it proved to be an advantage. His best start was first 5 times, at Rockingham in the spring, Pocono in Michigan in the summer, then Darlington and Dover in the fall. His best finish was first 3 times, at Pocono in Michigan in the summer, and North Wilkesboro in the fall, as well as winning the non-points race, the Winston Select All-Star race. This really was a season of major ups and major downs for Bodine, winning 3 races, along with the All-Star race, and 5 poles, but racking up 15 DNFs along the way, almost 50% of the starts he would make throughout the season. Overall, he scored 5 poles, 3 wins, 7 top 5s, and 10 top 10s, finishing 17th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. The 1995 NASCAR Cup Series season was not nearly as successful for Geoff Bodine as the season prior. He again was behind the wheel of the number 7 Exide Batteries Ford. His best start was 4th at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 5th at Martinsville in the fall. This was just not as good of a season for Geoff, not winning a race or a pole and spending all season outside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings. Overall, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 4 top 10s, finishing 16th in final Cup Series point standings. NASCAR formed the Super Truck Series, now the Craftsman Truck Series, also in 1995. Bodine made 10 starts behind the wheel of his own number 7 Exide Batteries Ford. His best start second at Saugus in the spring, and his best finish was second 3 times at Saugus and Bristol in the spring, then Richmond in the summer. Overall, in 10 starts, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 6 top 5s, and 7 top 10s, finishing 20th in final Craftsman Truck Series point standings. Next up was the 1996 NASCAR Cup Series season, and Geoff returned to his own number 7 QBC Ford. This was not a great season for Bodine, though he did score his final NASCAR Cup Series victory of his career. His best start was 3rd at Darlington in the fall, and his best finish was 1st at Watkins Glen in the summer. Through the season, he did improve, working his way up to 17th in Cup Series point standings by the end of the season. Overall, he scored 0 poles, 1 win, 2 top 5s, and 6 top 10s. Bodine made 4 more Craftsman Truck Series starts in his own number 07 QBC Ford. His best start was 1st at Homestead in the spring. His best finish was 8th at Nazareth in the spring. Overall, in 4 starts, he scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 0 top 5s, and 1 top 10. In 1997, Geoff Bodine once again returned to his own number 7 QBC Ford in the NASCAR Cup Series. Pat Trison became his crew chief for the 1997 Cup Series season, though Tim Brewer replaced Trison starting at race 23 in Darlington. After Trison quit mid-race, after a falling out with team manager Tim Brewer, and really kind of a miscommunication between Brewer himself and driver Geoff Bodine. Bodine's best start was 1st twice, in Charlotte and Atlanta in the fall. His best finish was 2nd twice, at Richmond in the spring, then Watkins Glen in the summer. This season was an improvement as far as speed and results, though he did DNQ twice, as well as DNFing 8 times throughout the season, including 7 out of 8 races in a row early in the season, which really set him back in point standings. Overall, he scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 3 top 5s, and 10 top 10s, finishing 22nd in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. That following season, in 1998, Bodine sold his team to Jim Matee, though he remained the driver of the number 7 Phillips Consumers Communications Ford. The team did DNQ once at race 9 in Talladega. Brewer started the season as the crew chief for the team until race 10 at California, when he was replaced by Pete Peterson. His best start was second at Las Vegas in the spring, and his best finish was 5th at Rockingham in the spring. Overall, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 5 top 10s, finishing 27th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the season, Bodine and Matee parted ways. By 1999, Geoff Bodine was starting to drive for a brand new team after his run as a car owner and driver, behind the wheel of the number 60 Power Team Chevrolet, owned by Joe Bessie. This was not a very strong season at all for Bodine, though this was his final full-time season that he would end up running in his NASCAR career. His best start was 3rd twice at Martinsville and Phoenix in the fall, and his best finish was 3rd at Martinsville in the fall. Overall, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 2 top 10s, finishing 27th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. After 9 seasons without making an Xfinity Series start, he made 11 starts throughout the season for 3 different teams, 8 starts in Dennis Shoemaker's number 64 Luxury Travel Motor Coaches Chevrolets. His best start was 4th at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was 7th at Atlanta in the spring. Overall, in 8 starts, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 0 top 5s, and 2 top 10s. 1 start in a number 06 Power Team Chevrolet for Joe Bessie at Gateway in the summer, starting 16th and finishing 41st. 2 in a number 33 Bayer Alka-Seltzer Chevrolet, owned by Base Motorsports. His best start was 7th at Memphis in the fall, and his best finish was 17th at Charlotte in the fall. To begin the new century, in the year 2000, Geoff Bodine would return to the number 60 Power Team Chevrolet in the Cup Series, though he would also run the inaugural Daytona 250 for the Craftsman Truck Series prior to the Daytona 500 to kick off the NASCAR season, behind the wheel of the number 15 Ford for Billy Ballou Motorsports. On the 57th lap, Kurt Busch, Rob Morgan, and Lyndon Amick were running 3 wide through the tri-oval. As Bodine moved to the outside to get by them, Morgan was spun across Busch's nose and into the side of Amick's truck, sending Amick into Bodine. When Amick and Bodine's tires slammed into each other, Bodine's truck was vaulted upwards over the outside retaining wall and into the catch fence nose first at 190 miles per hour. The impact tore the front of the truck into pieces and ruptured its fuel cell, leaving only small pieces of the roll cage intact. As Bodine was coming down the track, the truck was hit again by Lonnie Rush Jr., which caused it to roll down the front stretch. While rolling over and over, his truck was struck again by Jimmy Kitchens, thus igniting the fuel spilling out of its ruptured fuel cell. Bodine rolled 9 times before coming to rest on his roof. The accident was so severe, everyone, the announcers, crew members, and fans all believed that Bodine had been killed. Thankfully, he was alive. Injured, though, suffering fractures in his right wrist, right cheekbone, vertebrae in his back, and his right ankle. 9 spectators were also injured from debris going into the stands when Bodine hit the catch fence. Shockingly, he would only miss the first 10 races of the 2000 NASCAR Cup Series season. Geoff returned at the 11th race of the season at Richmond Raceway, where he qualified an impressive 4th and finished a solid 13th. His best finish was 12th at Indianapolis in the summer, though by race 26 he was released by Joe Bessie after struggling with finishes mostly in the 20s and 30s, even DNQing 3 times. For the penultimate race of the season, Geoff picked up a one-off ride from Chick McPherson's number 98 Ford at Homestead in the fall, starting 36th and finishing 41st. The following week, in the season finale, he made another one-off start in number 35 Bari Italian Foods Chevrolet, owned by Andy Petrie, starting 36th and finishing 43rd. In the Xfinity Series, he made 1 start for C.C. Welliver's number 36 Stanley Tools Chevrolet at Rockingham in the fall, starting 6th and finishing 14th. Everything really slowed down for Geoff in 2001. He only made 2 NASCAR Cup Series starts throughout the whole season, and a number 09 Ford, owned by his brother's Brett Bodine Racing team. His best start was 13th, and his best finish was 27th, both coming at Bristol in the fall. In the Xfinity Series, he returned to C.C. Welliver's race team, to make 17 starts behind the wheel of the team's number 66 Phillips 66 Chevrolet. His best start was 15th at IRP in the summer, and his best finish was 4th at Richmond in the fall. Overall, in 17 starts, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 2 top 10s, finishing 34th in final Cup Series point standings. Geoff returned to Daytona in 2002 for the first time since his accident. He would make 10 NASCAR Cup Series starts for 3 different teams, making 5 starts in James Finch's number 09 Miccosukee Indian Lottery Ford. His best start was 2nd at Daytona in the summer, and his best finish was 3rd at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 5 starts, he scored 0 poles, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 2 top 10s, making 4 starts in his brother Todd's Cup Series team's ride, the number 26 and number 66 Fords owned by Carter Haas Motorsports. His best start was 17th, and his best finish was 19th, both coming at Michigan in the summer. He made 1 start in Bill Davis Racing's number 23 Hills Brothers Coffee Dodge, starting 41st and finishing 39th at Martinsville in the fall. In the Series 400 held at Michigan in 2003, Geoff was asked to make his only NASCAR Cup Series start of the season when his middle brother, Brett, was running his team's final race with sponsor Hooters on the race car. Brett was practicing when he hit debris that cut his tire, leaving him to impact the wall pretty severely, breaking his collarbone and damaging his teeth. Geoff started 42nd due to the driver change and made a real charge up through the field until he started having issues, though he worked his way up into the top 20 a little after halfway, before going behind the wall for the rest of the day and finishing 39th. He made his return to the Craftsman Truck Series behind the wheel of a number 36 Ford owned by Alvin Thompson, starting 29th and finishing 27th after blowing his engine on lap 55. 2004 saw Geoff make 5 NASCAR Cup Series starts for the new Mach 1 Racing number 98 Lucas Oil Ford. His best start was 34th at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 28th at Pocono in the spring. Now in the Craftsman Truck Series, he made 5 starts, 4 behind the wheel of a number 03 Chevrolet for Steve Prescott. His best start was 24th in Atlanta in the spring, and his best finish was 10th at Daytona in the spring. Unfortunately, Bodine did not qualify for the only NASCAR Cup Series race that he would attempt in 2005, the Daytona 500. He did make the final 8 Xfinity Series starts of his career behind the wheel of Randy McDonald's number 72 Chevrolet. His best start was 32nd twice at Texas and Phoenix in the spring, and his best finish was 21st twice at Nashville and Dover in the spring. Geoff did not attempt any NASCAR events from 2006 through 2008. He attempted the Daytona 500 and the Spring Atlanta race, DNQing both in 2009, attempting them in Larry Gunzelman's number 64 Toyota. In 2010, he made 1 NASCAR Cup Series start behind the wheel of Tommy Baldwin's number 36 Chevrolet at Pocono in the spring, starting 40th and finishing 41st. Also making his final Craftsman Truck Series start of his career for Danny Gill's number 95 Dodge at Atlanta in the spring, starting 8th and finishing 26th after breaking a rear gear on lap 106 of the 130-lap event. Then in 2011, Geoff made his final 4 NASCAR Cup Series starts of his career for Tommy Baldwin's number 35 and number 36 Luke and Associates Chevrolets. His best start was 35th at Daytona in the summer, and his best finish was 30th at Homestead in the fall. So, in 575 NASCAR Cup Series starts, Geoff Bodine scored 37 poles, 18 wins, 100 top 5s, and 190 top 10s, with a best points finish of 3rd in 1990. In 94 Xfinity Series starts, he scored 13 poles, 6 wins, 31 top 5s, and 39 top 10s, with a best points finish of 19th in 1982. In 22 Craftsman Truck Series starts, he scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 6 top 5s, and 9 top 10s, with the best points finish of 20th in 1995. He was also the 1987 IROC champion, and he was one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers, not to mention all of the wins and championships he had in the modifieds, including 4 Cardinal 500s, the 1980 Spring Sizzler, the 1980 Dogwood 500 Classic in the modifieds, the 1980 and 81 Oxford 250, the 1981 Dogwood 500 Classic late models, the 2 Yankee All-Star League championships, and he's listed in the Guinness Book of World Records for most wins in one season for 55 modified wins. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.